Some folks call him the dirtiest player to ever grace the Premier League, while others see him as a cult hero. One thing is for sure, Duncan Ferguson was by far the baddest man in the history of football. And it's not even close. Even the toughest guys on the pitch ran for their lives when they faced Big Dunc. And it's easy to see why. Big Dunc was the first footballer to be jailed for an on-field event. Not to mention that he regularly pulled out UFC moves from his pocket whenever he got pissed. However, few players dared to fight Duncan Ferguson. Was it bravery or foolhardiness? I'll let you decide. Roy Keane was tough as nails in the 90s and early 2000s, but he wanted no smoke with Duncan the Disorderly. Speaking on an episode of BBC's Match of the Day Top 10, Michael Richards placed Roy Keane in 5th position among the hardest guys to ever play the sport. According to Richards, Keane fell below the pecking order because he backed down from a confrontation against Ferguson.
But he's got a free kick against Ferguson, who's left David May on the floor, and United...
Seeing Keane back out of a fight tells you just how much of a menace Ferguson was back in the day. I mean, this guy was beating up burglars, getting involved in several assaults, and going off at the slightest provocation. A 6'4" striker with a powerful physique to go with his height. Ferguson was no doubt as physically as imposing as they come. And unfortunately for this next guy, there was little he could do about it. In a 1998 Merseyside derby between Everton and Liverpool at Anfield, Everton's Ferguson collided with Paul Ince. Both players registered their names on the score sheet in a match that ended 1-1. Albeit, we saw a moment of madness from Ferguson. The former Everton striker threw Ince to the ground after coming together off the ball.
Over the top for Cadamartri, comes out to Ferguson. Thompson. Little incident there between Messrs Ince and Ferguson, ends with a free kick to Liverpool. Duncan Ferguson, of course, about to start a 3-match suspension.
But instead of rolling around like he had just been hit by a truck, Ince got up and carried on with it. No whining, no holding his face, no faking injury. After the match, Ferguson and Ince met in the players' lounge, and they both talked about the incident and enjoyed a few pints. But it was a different story when Big Dunc had this next player in a headlock. It's May 1998 and Arsenal are leading Everton 2-0. For a second, it seems like we're watching a move from the WWE playbook when Duncan Ferguson has Arsenal's Martin Keown in a chokehold about 5 minutes before the halftime whistle.
It was against Derby, but the same end of the ground. Keown comes through and takes everything, including Ferguson. Here they go again. And this time Gerald Ashby is isolating Ferguson as the culprit.
Arsenal won the league that season, but Keown, who was also as hard as nails, must have been thinking to himself that he had just faced the final boss of football's hardman. Years later, Keown would say that Ferguson was tough to face, and that every game, not just the headlock, was a fight. And if you asked Stefan Freund, you could be sure you would get the same response. The image of Big Dunc grabbing Stefan Freund around the neck created one of those iconic moments that fans won't forget in a hurry. Ferguson's Everton side was reduced to 10 men after Big Dunc was shown a second yellow card for wrestling Freund to the ground after an earlier elbow. As you would expect, the Scottish striker was furious with the decision and made his feelings clear to referee Barry Knight before seeking out Freund for round 2. It's almost like Ferguson was trying to pass a message that if an opponent was gonna go down, he might as well go down in flames. After grabbing Freund around the neck and roughing him up, Ferguson made a gesture towards the fans as he headed back to the dressing room. Ferguson was banned for 4 matches, but you wouldn't believe that the image of Freund's scrunched up face with Ferguson's arm wrapped around him ended up as a best-selling t-shirt among the stalls outside Goodison Park. Talk about the most unusual way to mark your hero status. Now, it's interesting to think that Ferguson named Liverpool's Sami Hyypiä among 3 toughest defenders he ever faced. Hyypiä was big, had a strong aerial presence, and read the game really well, even though he wasn't the quickest. But that doesn't mean that Ferguson wasn't going to leave his mark on him when they faced each other. Unhappy with a challenge from Hyypiä when Everton faced Liverpool in a Merseyside derby at Goodison Park in December 2004, Ferguson did this.
Ferguson. That's his first touch. And he was battered by Hoopian and he reacts. Duncan Ferguson. And he needs to be very careful about the way he approaches the referee.
It's crazy to think that no player dared to fight back when Ferguson pulled out those UFC moves from his pocket. Well, except for maybe one man. Neil Ruddock is in the conversation for being among the top 5 toughest men to ever grace the sport. Ruddock was hard as nails, broke opponents' legs, and fractured Peter Beardsley's jaw in a 1995 testimonial match. But unlike other tough guys who shit their pants when they meet the ultimate hardman, Neil Ruddock was keen on giving Ferguson a run for his money whenever they clashed.
Way behind Scales.
Two blokes having a good old kickabout with mutual respect for each other. Unlike many of today's footballers, Ruddock and Ferguson weren't rolling around on the ground type of players. They stood on business and carried on with the game, just like this next player. Back in the year 2000, Jaap Stam, who was arguably the best defender in the Premier League at the time, was given the impossible task of stopping Duncan Ferguson, who was now donning the Newcastle jersey. In that moment, we saw two of football's hardest men collide, as Stam tried to muscle Ferguson off the ball after the striker tried to run through on goal.
Ferguson barging his way through. Heavyweight clash with Stam, which has ended with both players on the ground. And Ferguson having a disagreement with everyone in sight. First it was Stam, then it was Bosnich, and then it was the referee. Hardly a couple of shrinking violets.
The action ended with both beasts on the turf, and you could tell that both of them were ready to do it all over again. The best part is that there were no arguments with each other afterward. Despite Ferguson fouling Stam didn't appeal for anything. He just carried on with it. Big Dunc would later get his revenge as he scored an insane swiveling volley from outside of the box to open the scoring soon afterward. The match ended with the Magpies thrashing United 3-0. Up next, we have a footballer who decided it was probably a good idea to challenge Ferguson to a fight. Ferguson was sent off in 2006 after a foul on Wigan's Paul Schartner. However, Jimmy Bullard thought it was a good idea to anger the Scottish striker even more. Bullard then decided to approach Ferguson, putting his hands around him. But after seeing that the striker was ready for a tear, Bullard told Ferguson that he was going to see him in the tunnel, to which Ferguson replied, "No problem, wee man." Instantly regretting his actions, Bullard tried to avoid Big Dunc, who was already waiting in the tunnel with his shirt off. Ferguson grabbed Bullard around the neck, picked him up, and gave it to him proper. Reliving the moment, Bullard said this about Ferguson.
Are you scared of anything?
I'm not afraid of nothing, Cammy. Except one man.
Are you mates with Big Dunc now?
A lot of boys I see in the street, they come up, yeah, he's chucking right hooks on the pitch. But look, watch my face here, Kevin.
I should also mention that Ferguson once gave a 6'2" hard man a smackdown for getting in his way. Sol Campbell once found himself in the unfortunate position of being on the receiving end of Ferguson's wrath.
It's rather like the Calcutta Cup match at Twickenham. England against Scotland. Into touch.
Again, no one dared to challenge Duncan the Disorderly after such tackles. But perhaps the most heinous of them all was when we saw Ferguson headbutt an opponent. In his early days at Rangers, Ferguson was infamously sentenced to 3 months in jail for headbutting Raith Rovers defender Jock McStay during a match.
In April 1994, with Rangers cruising to victory against relegation-doomed Raith Rovers, Duncan Ferguson became involved with Rovers defender Jock McStay. His headbutt went unpunished by the officials, but someone with a bit...
Interestingly, he didn't even receive a yellow card for the incident. But upon review, Ferguson was punished for his actions. He spent 44 days in Barlinnie prison and was also banned for 12 games by the Scottish Football Association. Duncan Ferguson was indeed an absolute nightmare to play against. He just simply did not care who you were or who you played for. He simply just wanted a scrap. His top-flight career ended with 8 red cards, 36 yellow cards, and also several off-the-pitch incidents. Off the pitch, he hospitalized burglars who broke into his home on 2 separate occasions. That's how scary he was. But despite his shenanigans, Ferguson was adored by fans for his passion and commitment to the game. Some fans say that in today's VAR era, Duncan Ferguson would not last 10 minutes in a game before getting sent off. But what do you think about the Scottish former striker? Be sure to share your thoughts down below in the comments.